the Committee on Housing and Executive Administration. The time is 10:11 a.m. on Wednesday, December 21, 2022. I'm calling to order this additional meeting of the committee to consider the committee's Council Period 24 activity report. This additional committee meeting, which is being held virtually via Zoom, is also streaming live to the committee's YouTube channel, HEA Committee. We have a quorum consisting of council members Kenyon McDuffie and council member Robert White. And I want to thank my fellow committee members for joining us today. Today, we are meeting to mark up the Council Period 24 Committee on Housing and Executive Administration report. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the committee continues to hold virtual hearings, roundtables, and additional meetings via Zoom for the duration of the council period. Nevertheless, the committee has been able to pass meaningful legislation and hold critical discussions with communities to address housing, gun violence, senior, and other human rights issues. Council Period 24, the committee held a total of 73 public hearings, roundtables, and markups, and successfully moved a legislation, including of the 33 bills and 42 resolutions that were referred to the committee. Of these, the committee enacted 12 bills and 35 resolutions, and also enacted 12 subtitles in the fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023 Budget Support Acts. The agencies and programs under the jurisdiction of the committee play a critical role in the lives of district residents. The agencies touch the lives of residents in every ward, of every age and income level and demographics. They care for seniors, our long-term residents, and our most vulnerable residents. They provide that most fundamental right, the right to housing, to thousands and thousands of district households. Agencies under the jurisdiction of the committee perform vital executive functions as well, supporting the operations of the mayor and the entire District of Columbia. I'll start first with the executive administration. During period 24, the committee was given jurisdiction over several agencies related to the executive administration of the district government. These include the Executive Office of the Mayor, the Office of the City Administrator, the Office of Secretary of the District of Columbia, Office of the Senior Advisor, Mayor's Office of Legal Counsel, Financial Literacy Council, the Real Property Tax Appeals Commission, and the Commission on Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday. The committee performs several functions in its oversight of executive administration, and configurations to agency boards are a central element of that oversight. It is for this reason that the committee is dedicated to holding thorough roundtables for nominees to ensure that board members are held accountable and district leaders have the expertise to make the agency successful. In addition to advancing nominations, the committee moved legislation to address changing environmental, social, and technological circumstances that we find throughout the city today. The committee passed the Office of District Waterways Act to provide an opportunity for stakeholder, community, and expert input regarding the use of the district waterways and waterfront, and to foster a comprehensive approach to further development. The committee also passed the Juneteenth History and Planning Act to create a commission that plans celebrations and educational surrounding the Juneteenth and Black history more broadly. To adapt to the changing technological and societal needs, the committee enacted Bill 24-457, which allows for remote notarization of documents, a critical practice for organizations like hospitals during the pandemic, which remains important in a post-pandemic society. The committee also secured an additional $1 million in funding to plan and construct a new building for the DC Archives so it can remain an important asset to district residents and visitors. In response to the district's gun violence epidemic, the committee held a joint public oversight roundtable on gun violence prevention and reduction initiatives. The roundtable focused on utilizing deterrence and community outreach to remedy the underlying social issues which lead to gun violence. As such, I highlighted building blocks, the first citywide program that aims to use a public health approach to gun violence. Rather than focusing on punishment, it reaches out to the residents responsible for gun violence and concentrates on meeting their needs. Since the program is new, the roundtable has been used to discuss its effectiveness and strategies for improvement. Gun violence is a complex problem, as we all know, but the committee has been dedicated to addressing the root causes by taking a broad and holistic approach. And that also includes making sure that those that do harm are held accountable. Each of these executive administration functions prioritize concrete responses to our ever-changing world. The bills that the committee moved, the budget is approved, and the roundtable it held all help clarify government functions, improve communications across government and non-governmental organizations, and provide resources to district residents. The committee took a comprehensive approach to its executive administrative functions during the council period to best address the variety of issues that the district faces. During council period, now we'll talk about housing. During council period 24, the committee passed significant legislation focused on preserving and expanding opportunities for new ownership, improving housing production, and protecting tenants' rights. And let me just mention that one of the key functions of the committee has been to provide a somewhat wraparound protection of that fund that everyone in the community speaks of, the Housing Production Trust Fund, which is to some ideas the bank for the development of new housing across the city. During the council periods prior to council period 24, the committee turned its attention to rent stabilization issues and assuring that the goals of the Department of Housing and Community Development were focused on increasing the number of deeply affordable housing units citywide. During council period 24, which today's report is concerned with, home ownership remains an essential component of our goal to provide district homeowners and households with stable, long-term affordable housing. Through its oversight role over the fiscal year 23 budget, the committee expanded and improved the Home Purchase Assistance Program. Among other improvements, the committee enacted legislation to raise the maximum amount of assistance to $202,000, an increase of 252%. This significant increase combats the increasingly expensive housing market in the district and allows participants to choose from a wide range of homes throughout the city. Previously, the committee, in previous council periods, the committee had moved the amount of home purchase assistance program from 50,000 to 80,000. And so with the advent of the new budget of FY23, we were very happy to be a part of the plan to provide an increase of assistance to $202,000, and to also sweeten the pot by having $25,000 as an addendum to that mortgage assistance for the new homeowners in the event that they needed it for major repairs in their new home. The committee also expanded and improved the Employee Assistance Program by increasing its funding and by enacting legislation to offer additional benefits to educational leaders, such as our teachers and our principals. During Council Period 24, the committee continued to support and strengthen limited equity co-ops by granting eligible co-ops a permanent property tax abatement and established a permanent advisory council to inform future policy. In previous council period, the committee actually funded a coordinating position in the Department of Housing and Community Development that will work with the limited equity co-op community. The committee also enacted historic legislation strengthening consumer protections for purchasers of new condominiums. As chair of the Committee on Housing and Executive Administration, I also served as the government representative on the Black Home Ownership Strike Force. The Black Home Owner Strike Force made recommendations for increasing access to ownership for long-term Black district residents and for effective use of the new $10 million Black Home Ownership Fund. The committee also enacted legislation to support legal services for district residents inheriting property to ensure that low-income district households are equipped to retain the generational wealth generated through home ownership. In FY22 budget, the committee dedicated significant funds to the Neighborhood-Based Activities Program, which offers grants to community organizations that provide housing counseling services to district residents, as well as tenant groups who plan to use the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, commonly referred to as TOPA. Through this funding, the committee supports one of the district's most essential tools for providing an obtainable path to home ownership for renting households. The Housing Production Trust Fund is one of the district's most important tools for producing and preserving affordable housing, as I mentioned earlier. And during Council Period 24, the committee approved significant funding increases to the fund and took action to improve transparency and greater accountability. The committee held a roundtable to discuss the policy and procedures for administering the fund, also enacted legislation through the FY23 Budget Support Act to establish additional reporting requirements about project selection and the distribution from the fund. The committee also reformed and strengthened the District's Opportunity to Purchase Act, or DOPA, program to make its projects financially feasible and took steps to improve implementation of the DC Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program, LIHTC. As chair of the committee, I held joint committee meeting roundtables with the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety and the Committee on Human Services to examine the effectiveness of the eviction moratorium. As the original sponsor of the bill and chairwoman of the committee, I believe without question that the eviction moratorium was a clear and necessary response to COVID-19. This legislation played a substantial role in stopping evictions and protecting district residents from COVID and displacement. However, the all-encompassing eviction moratorium resulted in a public safety emergency. In response, we introduced emergency legislation to carve out an exception to the eviction moratorium only for cases in which tenants presented a substantial threat to the health and safety of others on the premises. In council period 24, the committee passed the Eviction Record Sealing Authority and Fairness in Rental Amendment Act of 2022, which strengthens tenants' protection against eviction and prospective tenants' rights while applying for housing. Additionally, the committee worked to ensure that housing resources were available to our most vulnerable residents, LGBTQ, and seniors and returning citizens that are particularly vulnerable class. To address this, the committee funded an additional 40 housing vouchers in FY22, including 20 for LGBTQ seniors and 20 for returning citizens, and an additional 83 housing vouchers in FY23. We also assisted with the DC Housing Authority wait list and for residents that were leaving rapid rehousing program. All of this work was done with funding that other committees contributed to the Housing Committee in order to make these activities happen. The district's housing needs are diverse, and the committee continues to be committed to adopting solutions to fit the individual needs of the communities it serves. Now we'll turn to senior rights and combating sex discrimination. In addition to our focus on housing and related programs and issues, the committee also tackles senior rights and sex discrimination. Meeting the needs of seniors and providing age-friendly services is a high priority for the committee. Forces such as the pandemic and economic inflation have created a lot of uncertainty for seniors, especially those on a fixed income, and the committee addressed those concerns in several ways. During the council period 24, the committee made changes to the mayor's proposed budget for the Department on Aging and Community Living, commonly referred to as DACL, to improve support services for seniors, especially in the areas disrupted by pandemic. The committee also enacted bills related to food nutrition and overall quality of life, including No Senior Hungry Bill, which works to address senior food insecurity, and the Senior Nutrition and Wellbeing Bill, which improves oversight and outreach for DACL Senior Nutrition Program. During Council Period 24, the committee devoted attention to bills that combated sex discrimination and passed several significant pieces of legislation that expanded the rights of women, non-binary, transgender individuals in the district. Women, transgender men, and non-binary people who lack access to menstrual products are more likely to reuse products or use products for too long, which puts those individuals at higher risk for infection and other conditions that require medical attention. In response, the committee passed the Period Act, which reduces these health risks and helps our most vulnerable populations face one less barrier to ensuring their basic needs are met. The committee also enacted the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women Amendment Act of 2022. The act requires that individuals engage with coworkers respectfully and that government agencies and leaders foster an inclusive work environment which provides employees with sensitivity training. The bill does important work in addressing gender inequality and puts us on course to one day provide equitable work environments in which more women can meaningfully, successfully, and equally participate and contribute. In conclusion, this is a snapshot of the work that the committee has done this council period 24. Our report gives a more detailed and comprehensive overview of our work. I'm proud of everything that the committee has accomplished and look forward to building upon the work in the next council period. And before we undertake a vote, I will now turn and ask my colleagues to give them an opportunity to have their say on this matter. And so I'll start with Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you so much, Chairperson Bonds. I really appreciate all the work that you and your team have done during Council Period 24. Specifically, I want to highlight a couple of things, and I want to commend you for the many confirmations, which I think sometimes don't get discussed as much and as widely across the District of Columbia. But one of the confirmations was for the inaugural Chief Equity Officer for the Mayor's Office on Racial Equity, which is a key pillar of the Racial Equity Achieves Results Act that I authored and that the Council supported unanimously. The committee also ushered in a framework to retain longtime Black District of Columbia residents, which you mentioned in your participation with the Black Homeownership Task Force. It helped to expand resources in the Home Purchase Assistance Program, which is widely used and extraordinarily important as we think about expanding homeownership, particularly among Black residents and others who have been locked out of those opportunities historically. You all have worked with the executive on the approving the Heirs Property Legal Assistance Act of 2022, which authorizes the executive to issue grants to provide legal services for low-income individuals who seek to obtain clear legal title to inherited property, which is also such a huge issue and one of the ways that so many people have lost opportunities to build wealth in the United States and in the District of Columbia. And so I look forward to working with this committee moving forward, but definitely can look back on Council Period 24 with some of the accomplishments that have occurred. Obviously, I plan to continue to do rigorous work and oversight with my colleagues regarding the activities of the DC Housing Authority to make sure that we are seeing progress with the Stabilization and Reform Board that was passed yesterday. So I definitely appreciate your leadership and look forward to doing all that we can to improve the conditions of our housing authority residents and making sure that we're expanding homeownership opportunities for residents in the District of Columbia, particularly those who have not been afforded the traditional opportunities to acquire homeownership. And so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And, I really should have started by mentioning the historic legislation that we passed yesterday as it relates to changing the governance structure and hopefully bringing about quicker progress within the agency, our beloved DC Housing Authority. So thank you for adding that. I truly appreciate it. Thank you. And now I'll turn to Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you, Chairperson Bonds. And I don't want to be too redundant because you laid out so much of the work of the committee. I do just want to highlight for folks that this work was not done during normal times. This work was done during and trying to come out of a pandemic. So this has been a particularly challenging time where people have faced more housing concerns and crises than normal. And so I want to thank you for all of your work and thank your team for their work as well. On behalf of residents who have needed this committee and this council in particular over these past couple of years. So I know we've been proud of the work that we've done. As Council Member McDuffie said, confirmations are for people who play a significant role in the city, but often that's work that the public doesn't pay much attention to. And among many other things, this committee has paid careful attention to nominees, also has done significant work assisting the administration and of course helping in standing in the gap for seniors. So Chairperson Bonds, I want to thank you and your team for your work this council period, and I'm excited to vote on this today.
Well, thank you very much. And so with no further discussion, I now move the adoption of the committee's Council Period 24 activity report with leave for staff to make any technical changes. And I will ask all those in favor if you would signify with the sign of aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. The measure passes, and we will move forward this document to the full committee to the full council and move forward into the new council period. This concludes today's hearing, and it includes the committee's action for council period 24. And thanks to everyone who has worked with the committee. My staff, as many of you know, my staff is brand new. The pandemic has its way of making changes. So I believe that each of them is delighted to have an opportunity to continue to serve the residents of the District of Columbia, and to do so with a new start, so to speak, as we begin council period 25. And so I thank each and every one of them for their time and attention, and we will move forward. And with that, now I'll say to the public, the time is 10:36 a.m. and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Take care and happy holidays.
All right, see you
Thank you.
later.
Happy holidays.